When you have both big kids and little kids living in your house at the same time, the screen time rules can get a little dicey and a little messy. So today we're going to be talking about what our personal rules are, how we mesh the two together, and some ideas for you as you parent multiple ages. Hello, friends. Welcome to the Raising Arrows podcast. I'm Amy Roberts from raisingarrows.net, and this is episode number 165, Screen Time Rules When You Have Multiple Ages. All right, first of all, I want to tell you a little bit about our family, and then I'll dive into little kids, and then big kids, and then how we mesh the two together. First of all, we are a large family. I have 10 children. Currently, there are 8 of those children living in our home. One of those 8 is also married with his family living in our home while they are in a season of transition. We also have a 19-year-old who is part of that and a 23-year-old. So 3 adult children are living in the house currently. And then we have 15 and under, 5 kids who are 15 and under living in our house as well. Now, the 15 and 13-year-old do have different rules from the littler kids who are 11, 9, and 7, but they also have different rules from the adults in the house. And that's been its own little craziness trying to mesh all of that as well. But let me start with the little kids and what we do for the little kids as far as screen time goes. I do have another podcast. That is podcast number 74. And in that, I just talk about our screen time limits as a large family. However, that was almost 100 podcasts ago. So things have changed and we've adjusted. And I did have a listener ask me to specifically talk about how we are separating out screen time and figuring it out when we have these older kids in the house and how we're making that work. Okay, so to give you a little bit of an idea of what screen time looks like for our younger crew. Every day at 4 p.m., the kids get to choose 2 shows that they watch up on the TV. We do have a smart TV. They are allowed to watch YouTube. They're allowed to watch just regular cartoons. Sometimes they choose to watch Full House. That's been their latest thing. You just never know what kind of kick they're going to be on. It's there in the living room. Everybody is sharing it. They take turns deciding who's going to watch, one from the girls, one from the boys. Like I said, we have 5 kids 15 and under. They are the ones who are predominantly choosing for the 4 o'clock time frame. That usually lasts until about 5 o'clock. They go off and play. Then on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we allow evening time shows. We used to allow every single day, but what I was finding was that it was just kind of out of control. That's all they were doing in the evenings was watching TV. I don't really like that, especially when the weather is nice. And so they are kind of more required now to go outside and play from Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Thursday through Sunday, they can have shows, but I still encourage them to go outside. And 9 times out of 10, they will choose to go outside rather than sit in front of the TV. But I have found that it is the adults in our household who are the ones who like to unwind with the TV at night. And that kind of sucks those little kids in. Sometimes I have to be like, listen, we have rules here. I'm sorry. You need to watch that someplace else. You need to watch it on your laptop with earbuds in. Could you please respect that the kids don't need to be watching that much TV? So that's our basic TV rules when it comes to that screen. Now, most people are thinking about computers, phones, tablets when we talk about screen time because that's become the norm in our society. Our kids do not have phones. I do have a post on my blog that answers the question, do your kids need a cell phone? It sets forth some rules and guidelines that we have for deciding whether or not they need a cell phone. So you can check that out. That'll be in the show notes. Suffice it to say, our 15 and under crew do not have cell phones. That's right, 15-year-old does not have a cell phone. He doesn't need a cell phone at this point. Obviously, the 18 and up, they do have cell phones, they have jobs, they have lives, so they have cell phones. It's not the cell phones that are an issue. No younger children are allowed to just walk around with a cell phone. Those are for the adults. We do have video game times, and this is somewhat just for my own sanity. I like to be able to keep track of things. I like to know how much time they have spent. I like to know when they are allowed to spend that time. So for my own sanity, I need to plug them into certain spots throughout the entire week. We have had a recent change in our screen time. So if you listen to that old podcast, this is going to be something new. Basically, the kids have a set day a week where they get time to play video games. This may be on a tablet, it may be on a phone, and it may be on our desktop computer. They also really like to play together. They have a Minecraft server that they have built together, and they like to play that all together. So the way that this works is on Saturday, the girls have from 1 to 3. The boys have from 2 to 4. This overlaps because during that 2 to 3 time frame, that's when they play all together. That way they weren't trying to get extra time to play together. They were constantly asking me, can we play together? Can we do this extra and play together over here? So I overlapped the time so that they could play together from the 2 to 3 o'clock time frame. I also put them all on the same day. We were separating them out, the girls on Friday, the boys on Saturday, but that was not working out so well. So we changed that as well. There is another time slot throughout the week that they actually get to play all together as well, and that is on special night. We recently had a special night change. I will actually be doing a podcast about this very soon. If you have been a listener or reader for very long with Raising Arrows, you know that for years and years, I think for well over a decade now, we have been doing a special night. One child each week is the special night kid. It's looked different throughout the years, but currently we are doing something different where one night a week, they all get to play together, and there's a certain child who is the special night kid and gets to choose everything. So that's another time frame that they get to play all together, and that's another screen time. Then we have one more thing that is a new thing we've implemented recently, and we call it flex time. This is 1 hour of screen time that goes throughout the entire week. They can split it up into 30-minute increments. So they can do 30 minutes on Monday and 30 minutes on Tuesday, or however they want to do that. This is a time frame when they can invite friends to play on the server. It's a time frame when they can use it just as an extra time to play together, but it is throughout the week. And so that is called flex time because it doesn't fall on any particular day. Now, one more thing that we have, you're probably wondering how in the world does she keep track of this? Well, the kids have helped me for sure, but it all makes sense in my head because they've built on other things. So the other thing that we have is for the older boys. So those in between boys, the ones who are 13 and 15, they have a 30-minute typing time followed by a 30-minute game time. I know it's not very much, but it is a reward for being older and being more responsible. The 15-year-old actually has 2 of those throughout the week. 13-year-old has 1. The 11-year-old only has the 30-minute typing time. When he gets to be 13, he will also add on a 30-minute game time. So these are the rules and regulations we have for the younger crowd and the teenagers. I like to keep a tight grip on this whole screen time thing. And the reason for that is that it is very easily out of control. It doesn't take much for it to be out of control. Even as adults, I'm sure you realize how easy it is for you to doom scroll through Instagram, looking at reels and stories and posts and all of that stuff. It doesn't take much for us to get completely lost in our phones. And so I want to give parameters for my younger kids so that they aren't too young just consuming all of their time with devices. I don't think it's good for their little brains. I don't think it's good for their mental and emotional health either. If you are interested in learning more about the mental and emotional ramifications of screens, I'd encourage you to check out the book, The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. It will give you an insight into how much has changed since about 2009 in the welfare and well-being of our younger generation. It seems to have a pretty tight correlation with smartphones and the internet being in our back pocket at all times. And so I'd encourage you to check that out. Put some brakes on the screen time. And really, don't be afraid to put in some really great parameters that work for you and work for them. Okay, so you've heard the little kids, you've heard my teens or my younger teens, and then I'm gonna give you a real quick scenario with my older kids who live in the house. Most of them have devices, multiple devices. Most of them are using them in their own bedrooms. There is the occasional, we're gonna watch something on the TV. I do tell them it either needs to run through VidAngel, and VidAngel, I have a link to VidAngel in the show notes. You can check that out. It doesn't have everything, but it does have certain shows that you can run those things through VidAngel. It takes out the cuss words, it takes out the nudity, it takes out pretty much anything that you need it to take out. So they are allowed to do that, but otherwise we need to keep it clean when it's in the main living space. Now, I'll be honest with you. I say keep it clean, and probably some of you are like, what, are they watching things that aren't clean? Here's the deal. They're adults, and there does come a point where what we watch as adults is different from what the kids watch. There's different things that we are well aware are not appropriate. We keep a good check on that, and I am not going to dictate to my adult children what they are allowed to watch. Hopefully, I've raised them up in such a way that they know that there are certain things that they probably shouldn't be exposing their brains to. But at the end of the day, they're adults. They have to make adult decisions. That said, they are often asked to not be on their devices all day long as just a way to show that that is not something that we think is beneficial to anybody in the house. And so I do check in with them periodically. I'm like, do you think you need to be on the phone right now? Could you maybe take that someplace else? I just want it to be a culture of conversation. I want it to be a culture of going outside and being in nature. I would prefer that we didn't focus all our time on handheld screens. I just don't think it's good for anybody. So when it comes to meshing the little kids and the big kids together, really it's just putting parameters in place. It's having set times, and it's having set boundaries about what can and cannot be watched in the home, the times that it can and cannot be used. We did for a while have the older kids, when they were getting closer to that adulthood where we were transitioning from, the 15, 16-year-old into the 18-year-old time frame, we were asking them to not be on devices until 4 p.m., which is when the younger crowd was allowed to be watching shows and such. We aren't doing that so much now that those bigger kids are actually adults. We're just asking them to, kind of keep it to themselves, take a break periodically, and not be letting the little kids just hang over their shoulders and watch endlessly. The 15-year-old is definitely at this point transitioning into a little more mature responsibilities and privileges when it comes to screen time. He has more time, obviously, that goes along with his typing time. He is allowed to do some extra things on the computer. For instance, he edits these videos, and so he's obviously spending more time on the screen than he would be otherwise. He's also editing some of his own videos, and he's doing some things with his older brother, who is 26, remotely, and so they talk and work through some things on the computer as well. So he is definitely transitioning, and with those privileges come responsibilities. And actually, I'd back up and say that the opposite way. As you see your kids being more responsible, definitely give them more privileges. Just always keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on in your home, checking in with them. I do not like to have devices in bedrooms. I do not like to have devices down in the basement. There are a lot of different reasons for that. However, sometimes mistakes are made, and sometimes you're not going to get it all right. And so you have to just do your very best with it and figure out what works for you and your family, and not stress too much over it. But do realize that it is very, very important that your kids get sun on their heads. So the vitamin D, that helps with anxiety and mental welfare. They need to be outside. They need to be rooted and grounded in God's green earth, and just really get them moving, get them working hard, get them exercising, get them out there in the sun. All of those things will counteract the negative effects that screens do have on us. Screens keep us inside, honed in on these little metal devices. And that also can cause myopia. So be sure that you are having them look far, having them go outside, having them, look off to the horizon. Don't always be right here in front of their faces. Now, I know I threw a lot of information at you, and a lot of it was personal. A lot of it is, this is what we do. But I wanted to give you some ideas for what you might be able to implement. And I also wanted you to see exactly how much time my kids are spending on devices. Maybe you don't like to have that much time with your kids on devices. Maybe you are using a whole lot more time on screen time and you're thinking, we don't really have a problem, so this is working for us. That's what I want to stress here. If something about the screen time with your little kids or your teenagers or even young adults who are living in the house, if something about that is bothering you, reassess and figure out what it is. Does it seem like they're not using their imaginations, they're not getting outside, they're seeming kind of depressed and gloomy, or maybe it's simply you just don't like how much time they're spending staring at screens? Reassess, reevaluate, figure out what you need to back off of. If what you're doing is working, more power to you. You don't need to change anything just because I maybe do more screen time or less screen time than you do. It needs to work for your family, and you need to, again, be paying attention to the culture of your home. Does the culture of your home seem completely surrounded by screens and nobody's actually talking to each other, nobody's getting outside, people seem to be having some issues? Then yes, reassess and change some things. But if the culture of your home is still very engaged, very conversational, then I would not be worried about it. And I do have a lot of conversations with my children about why we have screen time rules and what I'm trying to accomplish with that. I want them to know that as they get older, I want them to police themselves. I want them to realize that a phone can really be a place of escape. And sometimes it's okay to escape, but a lot of times it's not a good thing to do. You really need to face things head on. I also have been very honest and open with them about the trolls that are out there online and how difficult it can be to navigate that when you're a young child. It can be difficult as an adult, but as a younger child, as a teenager, it just can really break you down. And I want to be honest with them about those things. I don't want to just say, well, no, and not give them reasons why I'm saying no. Otherwise, that just seems like a bunch of rules that don't make any sense. And then they're going to grow up and they're going to be, why are there so many rules? I don't understand. Nobody else had these rules. And then you end up with children who just throw everything out the window and swing the pendulum the other direction, also without any sort of understanding. A lot of this goes back to Josh McDowell's rules minus relationship equals rebellion. You've got to have that relationship. You've got to have that love, that understanding, that communication. Otherwise, you just have a bunch of rules that are not going to make sense to your children. And they may not make sense initially, but keep talking about them. Keep reassessing also why you have made these rules. Is there some sort of fear that you have that's unfounded and you need to deal with that? Or maybe you have had something happen and you need to explain to them, listen, here are some things that happened. Here are some things that can happen. I want to have as much control over this as I possibly can for a time, and I want to teach you how to have some self-governance with this, because ultimately that's what they're going to need. When they become adults, they're going to need to govern all of this themselves. And you are giving them the tools right now to do that. We live in a different world than what you and I grew up in. We know that. They don't know that. And so be sure that you are giving them as many tools as possible to be a functioning adult in the world that it currently is becoming. And that is going to just take all this conversation and discussion and building those relationships so that when they have questions, when they have concerns, when they're not sure what to do, they come to you and they ask you because they're not afraid of you. They're not worried that you're going to condemn them and judge them. They can actually have a conversation with you. So that was kind of an aside, a little bit of rabbit trail there, but ultimately I think screens and screen time rules kind of naturally lead themselves to those kinds of mental health, emotional health, dangerous situations that we didn't used to have in our world, and it's all coming through a screen. And so we have to have these hard conversations, and screen time rules lead to those hard conversations. All right, everyone, I hope you have gotten lots of great tidbits and ideas from this particular podcast. You can always send me an email at amy@raisingarrows.net. You can ask your questions. Like I said, this was one that came from a listener. So I'd love to have any ideas from you of what you'd like to hear me talk about. Until next time, this is the Raising Arrows podcast, your home for all things large family homemaking and homeschooling. Bye.